layout to look at, to kind of see what that would be. So what I'm going to call this, I'll call this, let me call this control CRL, right? I can remove my grid line, then I can now create this, and I'll call this my, let's call this the summary worksheets. Okay, now as I said, we want to tell a story. So now let's assume I actually don't know anything about this business. How will I want someone to tell me the story of the business? Right now, let's take a look at it first. So the first thing is, let's look at let's start with funding first, because I'm sure the reason why we are building this is to get access to funding, cash. So first thing is, I want someone to be able to say, oh, you know what, this is the funding, right? After you've seen, oh, this business is requesting for this particular amount, the next thing is, what do you want to use the money for? Why? Which is use of fund, right? Let me just type that, use of fund, which will be the next thing that comes into play, right? But even before this use of funds, right, by the time someone say, okay, this is the amount you are requesting for, then I need to tell them what is in for them, right? That is, and I need to also state the cost of funding. Then we can tell the story of, this is how we are going to make use of the fund. Okay, so as I said, you can be creative. Just depends on how you decide to tell the story. If you want to tell the story from revenue, right, that's fine. If you want to tell, just be creative. Okay, and maybe under here I can have my operational. Okay, should we have our operational assumption? So let's just, so let me put like a shape here. Now, this can change by the time we start our model view, but it's always good we have this layout. So let me remove the fill. So I don't want any fill. So which means that will be like a segment one. Let me remove this tick line. So this will be like our segment one. Okay. Now the second segment will now be here. So let's assume we are going to, let me just put this shape somewhere. So here, let's assume we are going to have our operational, then operational assumptions. Okay, so under operational assumptions, let's assume we are going to have our macro overview, right? We're going to have a macro overview, then macro overview. Let's have a macro overview here, and then we can have our operational input, the main operational input. I think that should, let's limit that our operational assumption to this key line item, right? So after that, maybe below it we can have our financial. Let's have financial output. As a financial output, as I said, we can be creative, so it's not like a must thing, right? So operational assumptions, then maybe, okay, maybe we can have this as other input. So other input, okay. Then here we can have our financial output. For our financial output, definitely we are going to have our P&L, right? Then we have our balance sheet. We have our balance sheet. Then we have our cash flow. So we can have that structure as this next phase. Okay. And then the third block will now be our evaluation. So evaluation metrics. And those will be our ratios. So let's assume we've calculated our, so we call this, uh, then we can have some our investment viability. Okay, and then maybe we now want to have our charts. So all those ones can come in here, right? So ratios and metrics Then we can also have our charts as well. I think this will be a very good story, right? And easy to tell from our summary worksheets. Okay, So now the next thing is let's now try to create this in our summary worksheet such that someone can look at the summary worksheet and they can be able to tell and see everything without having to go through all the worksheets. Right? So now let's get started with our summary worksheets. Okay, now let's get started with the summary worksheets. And as I said, the first thing we need is our funding, is our funding, is our funding. Now, you are allowed to be creative